Hey, Paul.
Yeah, Frank.
What do you want for breakfast?
Welcome to Book Time with Ryan. I am Ryan, and today I will be talking about Edward Bernays' Propaganda. And I'll read you the back. This book's from 1928, so it's old. It's dated. The nephew of Sigmund Freud, Edward Bernays, from 1891 to 1995. That's a long time. That's 104 years. See that quick math? That's quick math. Edward Bernays pioneered the scientific technique of shaping and manipulating public opinion, which he called engineering of consent. During World War I, he was an integral part, along with Walter Lippmann, of the U.S. Committee on Public Information, a powerful propaganda machine that advertised and sold the war to the American people as one that would make the world safe for democracy. The marketing strategies of all future wars would be based on the CPI model. Yeah. Cool, dated but cool. He is considered the father of public relations, and among his powerful clients were President Calvin Coolidge, Procter & Gamble, CBS, the American Tobacco Company, and General Electric. This is a little dark here. In addition, his propaganda campaign for the United Fruit Company in the early 1950s led directly to the CIA's overthrow of the elected government of Guatemala. My neighbor is Guatemalan. So that's not necessarily too positive. I've had this book for probably at least 11 years. And I don't know why I didn't read it. It's not that long. I think propaganda is just one of those things that you need to prepare for. But it wasn't bad. Now, we use propaganda in a way that is fairly negative. And that wasn't new in 1928, but what Edward Bernays is trying to do is change the story around propaganda. And actually, some of the introduction, which was done by Mark Crispin Miller, talks about how there wasn't really a negative connotation with propaganda. It started out, at least as far as they can tell, as a council for the Roman Catholic Church, and was really kind of seen as any kind of group that is spreading truth. And it wasn't really until World War I that propaganda started to have this negative connotation. So Edward Bernays is trying to change that with this. I don't think he succeeded based on how we think of propaganda now. Even when I was reading this, there's something about reading propaganda, the word, and you're like, uh-oh, something bad. This is not all on the up and up. But Edward Bernays is trying to say in this that propaganda is. Now, think of propaganda more as public relations. He's trying to make the word acceptable, but the way he's using it is the way you would use public relations. So he talks about public relations councils. This is a time before most companies really had kind of a public relations council, public relations representation. I've said this before. Actually, I said this in my last video, which was about kind of a public affairs or public relations book, which really kind of motivated me to read this book. I have dabbled. I have about almost 20 years experience in public relations or public affairs, communications, and I actually got this book while I was in grad school for strategic public relations from George Washington University, where I got my master's. So I like this stuff. There's actually, I really like the way he kind of proposes some of that. It is dated. This is a dated book. I mean, this is women as homemakers, women getting the vote relatively recently, having more of a role in government. It's dated. It's also dated because it's before World War II. So, and written in 1928, this is before the stock market crash. So there's definitely some negative information coming for businesses. Edward Bernays even talks about how propaganda is not for hucksters. It's not for somebody who's trying to generate interest in a stock that's a fraudulent stock. It should be used for truth and disseminating the truth. One of the things that he talks about is that this is in my own words, but you can't talk your way out of a crisis. The solution to your problem is not going to be public affairs or public relations. That's how you communicate what you're doing to fix something. But the underlying problem is what needs to be fixed. And he also talks about that. And I found it to be a very honest, very relevant, and really current, although it's dated. The advice is pretty on par with what you would expect to hear almost 100 years later. So that's pretty cool. It's a short book. It's 168 pages. It was a pretty quick read. There are some typos in here. I don't know how after 100 years you can still have typos, but there were enough typos that it was a little distracting sometimes. Blame that on Edward Bernays. I can't imagine that 100 years ago he was doing that, but it's one of the other things I liked that he did in it was he did differentiate between public relations, which he would say is the propagandist, and public affairs. He didn't say public affairs, but today we would differentiate, typically, not everyone, I think the people in the know would, between public affairs and public relations. Public affairs is more of what you think of from the government side. It is not trying to influence you to change your opinion. It's not pushing you in one direction or the other. It's really to inform, where public relations may be trying to influence or manipulate the public. Manipulate feels negative. It's really a distinction that he makes here, and 100 years later is true. The other thing he talks about, this is interesting. 1928, he's talking about influencers, and that the old style of public relations was really kind of just throwing it in the newspaper and hoping people understand it. And what he is talking about more is reaching the people that reach the people, not just newspapers, but also if you're trying to talk to people about, one of the campaigns, is why I did my thumbnail, was about making bacon and eggs part of breakfast. It's really increasing sales of bacon and eggs. And instead of just saying, it's good for you, it's not that great for you, although back then I don't think they knew that. It's really going to the doctors and telling them to tell their patients, hey, this is a hearty breakfast meal. This high-fat bacon is good for generating your energy in the morning, and so is eggs. So do that, and people trust their doctors, and they go with that advice, and they would. So when you think of bacon and eggs for breakfast, it wasn't always that way. But thanks to Edward Bernays, it is now, which is just huge. Think about that. You don't even question bacon and eggs. It's when you eat it at a different time, it feels like you're eating breakfast. That's what he's talking about. He even talks about how there's this committee behind the scenes in the shadows that is affecting people's. It's like a shadow government that's affecting people's opinions and people's desires, and they don't even know it. It's pretty heady stuff for public relations people, I agree, but it's not that far off from books like Nudge and Thinking Fast and Slow. And while he doesn't have kind of the behavioral economics push behind this, because it didn't exist then, he is talking about how you have these nudges or these kind of messages out there that the groups, the crowds, the people as a whole are picking up on and responding to, and they may not even know it. It's not an organized approach. It's not like there is a dark committee somewhere that's coming up with what people need to do, but it's a concerted effort from different little parts of society that eventually develop into some kind of push. So I liked it. I thought it was interesting. I thought as a public relations person, it really it's almost like the pump you up for what you do. It certainly makes it sound sexier and more powerful, but there's a lot of truth to what he's talking about there. And, from 100 years ago, almost 100 years ago, that's pretty impressive to be relevant and prescient. So that's it today. I did want to show you one thing. I had to put stuff on my desk. I cleaned off my desk recently. There was just too much stuff. I don't know what it was. I threw it away mostly. But one of the things that's on my desk, and I can't figure out what to do with it, was I told you in one of my videos, which I'll connect here, that I went to the International Cricket T20 World Cup, USA versus India. USA lost, but it was a really fun game. I had a lot of fun. It was a fun game, and I had a lot of fun. I bid on and won the score sheets from the game, from the match. So they came, and I was picturing something small, but they weren't small. They're huge. This is it. This is the binder came in, and here's my certificate of authenticity. And then here are the score sheets. Huh? Oh, you can even see my camera. All right, so it's pretty cool. Now, those are huge, and there's 2 of those that you can see. There's also 2 behind them. Each team selects somebody to keep the score, and they keep score for both sides. And that's what that is, the score sheets. So there's actually 4 of those, and they're pretty big. They're like the size of a placemat, and I'm not exactly sure where to put them. So that's my problem. But I'm glad I got them. They're very cool. Took about a month to get here from Australia, where they went from the United States, because that's where the company that does the auctions for those things is. And then it really only took like 3 days to get here from Australia, which is impressive. That's impressive. Good job, DHL. I think it was DHL. So thanks for being here today. Edward Bernays, propaganda. It's a negative word now, but it wasn't when he was using it, or he at least tried to make it not a negative term. I don't think he succeeded, but I think what he says in here about public relations is very relevant from the father of public relations. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.
Stacks of pancakes up to the sky doesn't seem to catch my eye. A bowl of cold